If you've been in business for a while and you still are not at the revenue you'd like, chances are you are hitting some pretty common stealth growth barriers in your business. Hey, it's Melanie Benson. I am known as an authority amplifier to expert-based entrepreneurs who are ready to reach 5 and 6 figure months. And this is a part of a special series I'm doing for my Amplify Your Success podcast on what I call the 3M method: messaging, monetization, and mindset that unleashes the magic in your growth. And for the last 24 years, I have been around the block a few times. I've had my own successes. I've had my own epic failures. I have definitely bumped into quite a few of these stealth growth barriers, and I'm pretty good at seeing them in the blind spots of my really talented clients. So I thought what I would do in part 2 of this series is to unpack the 10 way too common stealth growth barriers that may be in your blind spot, and you're like, what is really going on here? And even if you don't resonate with them, you may have a little bit of an aha moment of something you need to optimize in your business. So it doesn't have to be working against you, but it may not be optimized either. So let me count these down. I'm going to start with number 1. And this is something that I'm seeing happen a lot. If you follow human design at all, human design is one of the tools in my toolbox that I use. Is becoming very popular. It's basically like the way our energy is formed, and it gives me a lot of clues into how people can really optimize their messaging and positioning in their marketplace. Well, the reason I bring that up is because different human design types tend to want to do a lot of different things. They have lots of different interests and passions, and they tend to bring that all into their visibility strategy, like their social media platform, or like having too many different websites. And this is a common problem, I guess you might say, is your audience doesn't get what you do. They don't know what the problem is that you solve. And ultimately, it leads you into being an invisible expert, because either you're doing way too many things or you haven't really figured out how to articulate how you solve the problem and what you can do to help people that you want to work with. So I'm going to unpack that a little bit more in the next of the series, because invisible expert syndrome is really at an all-time high. And I think partly it's because we're in a very crowded marketplace for most of us, and you're going to have to figure out how to stand out. So let me bump into number 2, and that is, and this one's a little bit tricky to discover, but as you probably can tell, our marketplace is evolving at record speed. We have changes all the time. We have AI that's emerged very profoundly in the last 18 months to 2.5 years, depending on how you're tracking it. We have a shift in the coaching marketplace a bit. We have a lot going on, especially in the United States, in our political climate. So this all creates different needs in the marketplace. And what happens is the market evolves, the buying conditions of your best clients evolve, the sophistication of you evolves. Like, you continue to grow and have new interests and new tools and new talents and superpowers, but your brand and your positioning isn't evolving with it. I personally had a huge wake-up call around this in 2008, 2009, because the market was shifting. I wasn't savvy enough at that stage to really recognize it. I'm one of those people where it's like, plant the tree and stay there. Like, I want to keep milking my cows, so to speak. I don't like having to figure out all the new stuff at that time. And now I look at it more as like a big adventure. So you have to make sure that your brand and your positioning basically means how does your industry, your clients, your colleagues, people that might refer you business, see what you do as compared to the problems in the marketplace, right? Do you have clear positioning and people know how you're going to solve the problem for them? Back to number 1. So if you're not evolving your brand and your messaging, for that matter, and your positioning as the market's evolving, chances are you are invisible in the market. And this obviously creates a sales problem. Number 3, and this is a tricky one as well, and I definitely see this very quickly in my clients when I'm unpacking their heck yes offer with them, that they're missing a clear brand, bold brand promise. And that might mean a lot of different things to different types of businesses. But in a market like we have right now, if you sound like everybody else, you're invisible. If you don't have a clearly articulated brand promise, like this is the problem I solve, or this is the outcome I deliver, it's very easy to pass someone by unless you've gotten into a conversation or you've stumbled into somebody's marketing that is like really compelling. And if you really study the standout brands, the people that do well no matter what's happening in the marketplace, they have a very clear brand promise. That brand promise has been time tested, it's proven, and they are really good at continually showcasing that in their marketplace. And that creates buzz and momentum for them. So if you don't have a clear, bold brand promise, it doesn't mean you're doomed. It means that you need to uncover that. You need to potentially have somebody unpack this with you, because oftentimes it's very hard to see the forest through the trees and see it for yourself. But if you are missing some of that buzz and momentum in your industry, chances are your brand promise is not clear, it's not articulate, it's not compelling, it's missing some energy, which we'll cover a little bit more in a minute. Number 4, this is huge. You have messaging disconnects. This is probably the single biggest reason why I get new clients these days. I kind of have this unique lens into looking at people's messaging. I look at it from the perspective of the coach, but I can also look at it from the perspective of their audience or their community, because I've had so much experience in different types of businesses over the years. And what happens in a messaging disconnect is your message is invisible, like it's either uninteresting, meaning it's too plain, it's generic, it doesn't stand out, it has no energy to it, or it's irrelevant. Okay, so if irrelevant message, basically you've neglected to build a bridge between the world that your potential client lives in, their desires, their problems, their unique cravings, right? Like the things that they're desiring and searching for, and your offer. And we take for granted that they're going to get it. Well, let me tell you, they don't. And the more sophisticated your potential audience is, and the more nuanced your offer is, or the more you are experimenting with different ways to deliver what you're doing, the more important it is to build that bridge, because we cannot assume that our potential buyers get it. And oftentimes the number one thing I have to solve with a client is that disconnect. I was working with a woman who her big thing is she's very passionate about the kind of shifting the United States' relationship to the patriarchy, right? And so whether you believe that or in that or not, it doesn't matter. But her problem is that she was shouting from the rooftops, but at like a fire hose, and trying to solve basically way too many problems. But there was no bridge between the world that her potential movement participant was in and the thing that she wanted them to do. So we had to build her messaging bridge. And it's not that hard, but it does mean you really have to understand some other things. Okay, so you really got to understand the bridge between your world and their world to get that one solved. And by the way, messaging solves a lot of problems. If you have a sales problem, you probably have a messaging problem disguised as a sales problem. Okay, and oftentimes when things are broken in the sales mechanism, it's because your messaging is not landing right for your ideal client. All right, next is kind of a cousin, if you will, to messaging problems, is you have a sales problem and you are missing an essential selling trigger. So I call these sales triggers in my program, because what happens is we can do the best job ever in attracting people, and we can be super compelling and have all this great energy. But then if people don't do something immediately, what are you doing with those leads? This is the single biggest reason why really talented experts end up not having like consistent high 5, 6, maybe even 7-figure revenues. Like you're not doing anything with the leads once they get past that initial opportunity, having heard of you, jumping into your sales process, and then boom, what next? Okay, so you have to have a sales process and sales triggers. So I call sales triggers things like an event, a webinar, like a call to action of some kind, a way to advise your audience, hey, I'm here to do this. We do this. If you want this, let's, get you into a sales conversation or into the buying process. In some cases, it can even just be a nurturing system. It would blow your mind. Now, if you're really good at this, you're really good at nurturing. How many people are not nurturing. They don't send emails regularly and they're like, oh, I don't want to bother my audience. If you're not nurturing your connection, somebody else is. Okay, so you need to have a nurturing process that supports your selling process. That's a big one that people miss all the time. Now, let's get into a couple other areas that I think play out in our blind spots, right? So our first 5 have been about marketing and sales, but there's some other things that are going on here. And number 6 is, sorry, I'm just rearranging my list here for a second because I want to talk about it in a little bit different order, is winging it. And I know this because I talk to a lot of people who are like, well, this isn't working. That's not working. And I start to go into the diagnostic and I realize, oh my gosh, they're winging it. They don't have a revenue plan. They have no roadmap for how they're going to produce the revenue each month. They just kind of figure out, what do I want to do next month? Okay. Oh, I need some money. Maybe I should write a couple social posts. And if that's working for you, high five. Awesome. But chances are it's not producing consistent revenue and you're working way too hard for the revenue that you have. So winging it basically means you don't have a revenue roadmap. You don't have a strategic marketing plan. And it doesn't have to be complicated, but you need to know where you're going and when things are going to happen if you're going to fully optimize your whole process so that you're getting to those higher revenue months. Okay. So you're winging it and you need a plan. Did that one hit a nerve? Let me know if you're like, yep, oh yeah, I'm totally guilty of that one. Number 7 is, and it's kind of, again, a cousin to winging it, and that is you're doing too much alone. You don't have enough support. And this one I know is complex because if you don't have your revenue goals met, you're probably thinking to yourself, I can't afford to hire the help I need. Okay. And what happens is you get stuck as the bottleneck to your growth. Now, there's a lot of layers to team. I'm not going to unpack this all here, but if you are doing everything by yourself, or you don't have enough marketing admin, you don't have a tech person who handles the back end, and maybe even a personal assistant to help navigate a lot of the routine activities, chances are you do not have what you need to be able to grow. You're in maintenance mode. And this is why you're not growing and hitting new levels of revenue, because you're doing too many things on your own. And let's just face it, if you can't get to it, it's not going to get done, right? This is why people have opportunities that go dormant. So that's a big one. Number 8 is an overcomplicated business model. Now, there's a lot of information out there in the world of coaching and gurus who teach their 7 and 8-figure business models. And they're like, you need to have all these different kind of offers. I get it. Look, if you're in the beginning stages of your business and you're not even getting to consistent 5 figures, chances are you need to really simplify your model. If you're at those higher levels, the cost of a complicated business model will often erode your profits faster than it will grow you. So what I mean by an overcomplicated business model is you have too many different offerings that require too many different marketing strategies, and you need too much team to deliver on them. Now, I don't know about you, but I am really good at overcomplicating things. And I learned a super big lesson about this about a decade ago when a young man came to me and he said, hey, I really want to work with you. I really resonate with what you do. He had actually heard me on a podcast. I think it was John Lee Dumas's podcast. He'd gone back and listened to the beginning season. And he said, I know I want to work with you, but I don't really get which of your programs I'm supposed to do. And I don't get what I have to do when I finish this one. And so I lost somebody who really wanted to work with me after our first session because I didn't have a clear customer journey. I had a way too complicated business model and the connection points weren't seamless. And I, at that point, was really kind of in between what I did before and what I do now. And I didn't have clarity. And I think that happens a lot when you've been in business for a while, is what you've done up to now isn't working, where you're going next isn't clear, and it gets complicated, right? Because you don't really have anything exciting. But also we can just have too many offers. We can have too much complication in how we deliver it. So think about, is your business model potentially costing you in profits, in energy bandwidth, in your peace of mind, because you've been sold a bill of goods to have a complicated, or a multifaceted, I should say, business offering suite? I had a client one time who, she was focused on 7 figures, and she'd been working with a coach for a while who said, hey, you should, so she was an accountant, and she had a great accounting model. She had a really awesome offering suite. And she had a coach who said, now you should teach other accountants to do what it is that you do. But the problem was, doing that meant she had to pause growing the accounting business and where her real, what I call that unique profit amplifier was, and grow this other business, which meant an entirely new audience. And so she was not growing the thing that she was good at to grow this new thing, like literally starting a new business. When we worked together, we did a VIP day, and I was like, hello, let's do this a little different. We unleashed her 7-figure business model by just quitting, or pausing actually at the time, but I think she eventually quitted the teaching other accountants to do what she did. Because it wasn't her superpower. It wasn't where the market had the most bang for the buck. She didn't have a machine built around it, and it was way too stressful, way too time consuming, and it wasn't ever going to deliver the revenue that focusing on her core offerings would. We simplified our business model. All right, so that's number 8. Number 9, you have not put in place the systems and infrastructure to sustain that next level growth. Now, as I'm recording this, I am in a painful investment of infrastructure. And nobody ever wants to invest in building out their systems in the infrastructure. But when you don't do it, things break a lot. And so, yes, we have to lay some foundational pieces in place if we want to grow and have that growth feels more seamless. When people talk about like effortlessly growing those 7 figures, they've laid the groundwork for foundational systems, infrastructure pieces, operational pieces, so that other people can pick it up and do what you do for you. And if you don't have those things in place, you're probably feeling pretty frustrated with your delegation. You're probably having some breakdowns in how things get delivered through other people on your team. Chances are you have a huge profit leak in your business because you're doing things that other people should do, could do, would do if they just simply knew how to do it. Okay, so you need to have the right systems and infrastructure in place. And when I hear from people that they've delegated, but they're kind of like still in those key roles doing too much, this is usually the culprit. Number 10, we're going to wrap up with this one on this particular episode. And this is going to kind of open the door to a episode I'll drop in 2 segments or sessions from now. And it's about our mindset. And I know this one because I've done this one. And it's playing not to lose instead of playing to win. Whoa, what does that even mean, right? Like, how do I know if I'm playing not to lose? Well, playing not to lose basically means you are so afraid to take a risk. You're in your head about everything. You're so worried what's going to happen. You're going to do just enough to not fail at something, but you're not doing what it takes to actually win. Now, I'm really wired to win. I am wired to win, but I've actually had enough painful failures along my way that I catch myself sometimes going, I'm afraid to lose. This comes up a lot if your revenue is in the sharp zone, meaning you're really on the edge of, if it doesn't work, you're in trouble. I had a client a couple of years ago, and I learned this with this person because they never really took action on these great strategies because they were so worried if it didn't work out, like what would that mean for the revenue? So they take these brilliant strategies and ideas and just sit on them. They were dormant. So playing not to lose is one of the ways in which we sabotage business growth by simply keeping things safe, playing a much smaller game, not taking risks, not doing something that someone may call you out on. This is another way that we stay invisible in our marketplace, is we're just so focused on not losing money, not losing time, not losing energy, not losing clients, that we don't gain anything. And I really think this is a great place to end today, because if you're playing not to lose, you definitely want to make sure you're listening to this whole series, because we're going to make it so that playing to win feels exciting and compelling and energizing. Because look, if you're exhausted and you're overwhelmed and what you've been doing isn't working, you're probably playing it really safe right now. You're doing the bare minimum. And I get it. Like, look, nobody ever said running a business was going to be easy. And if they did, they're not being truthful. There is an investment of time and energy that we make in this because we're so passion driven. There's so much for us at stake. And if you've been playing not to lose, you got to reconnect to your big why. Why are you doing this? Why do you want to get out there? What's at stake for you? Right? Like, plug back into the juice. Figure out what it is that you really want to be. You don't have to be $1 million business. You don't even really have to be a 6-figure business. Now, I might not be the coach for you if you don't want to be at least a 6-figure business. Okay. Because that is the specialty I have, is taking people from the high 5 and early 6 figures into high 6 and 7 figures. That's where my magic comes to life. So, are you playing not to lose? Let's start being wired to win. Play to win. Get in the game called How Do I Make a Greater Impact, and do it in a way that feels expansive. Yeah, that gets juicy, right? So over the next few weeks, I'm going to continue to unpack my 3M method. And we're going to look at the areas where 5-figure and early 6-figure business owners are getting in their own way, and how you can make the second half of this year tremendously successful. So if you're watching this in the video series, we'll be dropping this on Tuesdays. So put the alarm on, make sure you're following me wherever you're watching this so that you can get notified when this drops. You can also catch the replay later on Amplify Your Success podcast. And here's my request. If you've gotten an aha from the session, or you think some people in your community could get a lot of value from what we're talking about here today, please comment, tell me what your aha was, or something that you really got value out of in today, or share the video. Next up, I'm going to unpack the biggest reasons why experts are invisible in the marketplace, even if they're super talented and been doing this